Hi everyone, my name is Husna Rabigam. I'm the Associate Editor and Career Coach at cheekyllittlecareers.com. Welcome to the third in a series of videos I'm recording with my mentee, Robert Greene, on how to impress on vacation schemes. Our previous videos looked at what to dress, or what to wear even, and how to dress. And then the second one looked at networking and how to use networking in the context of job search techniques and how you can exploit or harness the individual contacts you'll make during your vacation schemes to sort of longer term effect. In this video, we're going to talk about what to expect. So you filled in all those forms, you're excited, you've got your outfit ready. So what happens on the actual day? But before we launch into that, let me get Robert to say a few words about himself.
Thanks, Hosnara. So yeah, I'm Robert and I am a former journalist and I'm changing career. So I'm a career changer officially, I think that's the term. And I'm hoping to become a commercial solicitor. So I've secured a number of vacation schemes. It's my first time really to work in a law firm. So I'm really looking forward to this session because I really don't have that much idea about what to expect on the vacation scheme. So I think this will be a really useful session.
Sure, you've got a few questions lined up for me, but let me just set the scene. I think the vacation schemes that were coming up over the summer, and certainly the ones coming up in the next few weeks over the Easter or spring holidays, will certainly be virtual. So everything we talk about will be based on the assumption that the forthcoming schemes will be done remotely rather than on the ground, which is really disappointing because it is so nice to be able to meet future colleagues or potential future colleagues. But I guess that's the harsh reality of living through a lockdown and through a pandemic. So, what do you want to know, Robert?
Well, I guess the first thing is what kind of task can I be expected to be asked to do? Obviously, I am only studying the law, so I only know so much and can't be expected to know as much as the trainee, let alone an associate. So I'm just wondering what kind of tasks I can be asked to do and realistically how I can prepare to do those tasks in advance.
I think the best way to prepare for a vacation scheme is not so much revising the law, it's really making sure that you understand everything you need to know about the firm that you're doing your schemes with. And you're doing schemes with three different firms, and they are quite different. So it's really worth spending a bit of time researching the core practice areas and key individuals. Look at the news pages on their websites to see what recent work they've been involved in. Because the first way to impress on a vacation scheme, in terms of the day to day interactions you'll have with the lawyers, will be to be able to talk intelligently about the work they do and showing that sort of genuine enthusiasm. With regard to specific tasks, it will vary hugely depending on which departments you get to spend time in. And of course, firms are having to make adjustments for the fact that this is done virtually. So expect to have some mock exercises that don't really relate to any real clients, and they will be testing your teamwork, research skills, time management, etc. So it'll be most probably a case study which will test some very basic legal knowledge, but more, I would think so, sort of commercial sort of acumen as well. With regard to work that you might be doing with your trainee buddy that you'll get assigned by most firms, it could be a really simple research task, or it could be reviewing a document. It could be, I hate to say this, a little bit admin-y focused. But I think with that, take it, don't think that you're above it, and ask for the context. You know, how does this task fit into the bigger picture? Because you'll find, especially because I know you're doing a scheme at Scaddons, which does do really quite sizable deals. So do not expect to see a deal from start to finish. What you're probably going to be involved in is small matters. And it's not just the deals, the cases they do if you end up sitting on the litigation team will be the same. So it really asks intelligent questions about the matter as a whole. You know, who are the key clients? Why are they doing this? What are they trying to achieve? Those real broad questions that shows that interest will go a long way. But as I said, don't think that anything is beneath you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. What though if you're asked to do a task, for example, and it is something that's quite complicated, who should you ask? Because I think the difference with doing a virtual scheme probably compared to a normal scheme is that you can't see the people, so you can't necessarily gauge whether somebody is busy and whether it's a good time to ask them a question, or you can't necessarily catch somebody on the fly.
Yeah.
So what would be your suggestions in terms of approaching people to ask them questions, and who would you approach?
Well, you will be, I'm sure, paired up with a trainee, and they would be an obvious port of call. But I think what you really should work towards is avoiding that situation arising in the first place. And the way to achieve that would be, if you are given a piece of work and you're not entirely sure what's expected of you, be brave and ask for clarity. It's really important to know what the other person delegating the work to you is expecting. Is it a deep dive? Is it something quite light touch that they're after? Is it going to really be used for anything beyond an opportunity for you to learn? You could also ask them, if you were doing this, where would be a good starting point? If it's research, for example, you could ask, how long should I spend on this? And then to avoid that situation where you're sitting there sweating, thinking, oh, I don't know what to do, I'm stuck. What you could do potentially is ask the person whether it's worth having a follow-up call partway through the task just to update them on how you're getting on.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I guess part of it is trying to get as much information from the offset, so you've as clear expectations
Yeah,
going into the task, and then obviously making a stab at it
yeah.
rather than asking, simple questions without even giving it a go.
And often you'll find when people are delegating to you that they're thinking aloud. And to get into that habit of getting clarity by the time you wrap up the conversation is really important. Related to that, if someone is talking really quickly or they're being a bit too ambiguous, it's worth again being really brave and saying, can you please slow down? You could also ask whether they're going to send you anything else by way of follow-up so that you know how detailed your notes should become.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. The other question I had was in relation to working with other trainees. So on all of the vacation schemes, there are a number of other trainees that will be doing tasks, and I guess there's always a risk that it becomes quite competitive. So what would be your advice for sort of focusing on yourself, but also trying to, as you said, work as part of a team, because that is something that they will be assessing?
So you met, I'm assuming, other students on the scheme.
Sorry, yeah, so
Yeah,
other
yeah.
vacation
No,
schemes.
no, that's fine. There is going to be that sort of, how friendly do you become with people who you're ultimately competing with? Because the end goal is to convert this vacation scheme into a training contract offer. I think that going around stabbing anyone in the back is frankly unacceptable. I think being a decent human being and being a team player, offering help, rolling your sleeves up if someone is struggling, to say, is there anything I can do to make your life easier? It's that sort of behaviour that people will remember for the right reasons. Behaviour where you're gossiping or you've set up a WhatsApp group and you've sending each other inappropriate messages is what will get you into Roll on Friday for the wrong reasons. Okay, so offering to help, being available, but obviously having those boundaries, which is important because obviously when you're doing a scheme from home, there is no boundary. You don't just leave the office for the day. That is important, but I don't think there's enough space in all the schemes for more than one trainee. So the fact that you're competing with them should be not your worry. What you should be doing is focusing on yourself and how you're going to impress. And as I said, being a decent person goes a long way to impressing others.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. The other question I had was in relation to preparing for any formal tasks. So, for example, presentations or an interview, for example, for a training contract. Some firms do it, some other ones don't. What would be your tips for preparing for those formal assessments as part of the vacation scheme?
I think, firstly, don't get bogged down in too much detail because what people sometimes look for is that one piece of law or legislation or case law that's the sort of smoking gun or the magic bullet that's going to answer all their prayers. I think that most case studies expect you to have a broad understanding of lots of principles and uh, issues rather than one specific thing. As I said, because there will be non-law students or law conversion students like you are, on the scheme, it would be unfair for them to test you on black letter law. It's not an exam. And I've noticed when people do these case studies, they sometimes spend so long looking for the legal answer, they miss really basic commercial points.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, not to get lost in the detail, I
Yeah.
guess. And in terms of on the scheme, and as I said, it is virtual and you can't necessarily tell, who's working, when they're working, who's busy. How do you manage your time effectively to ensure that, you're busy, but you're obviously not working every hour under the sun and nobody's even recognizing the work you're doing?
Firstly, don't expect it to be a bit of a free fall. You're not going to just have an induction and then that's it, bye bye, off you go. I think you'll find that the day will be pretty structured. And certainly the bigger law firms that have quite a few students participating. And remember, this isn't the first time firms are doing virtual schemes, so lessons have been learned along the way by the firms. So there will be times where you'll have opportunities to do one-to-one catch-ups with trainees, with associates, etc. There'll be times in your day where you'll be expected to do some work on your own, which will be something that perhaps your trainee buddy has delegated down to you or someone else within the team. The You'll have, I'm sure, some version of a sort of chat function where you can see who's logged on and around and who isn't. So I don't think you should worry about sort of being left to sort of fend for yourself and that you've got nowhere to turn to for help or to go if you feel that you don't have enough to do. Okay, so if you do end up thinking, actually, I've got a bit of spare capacity, it's at that point you would reach out to someone within that team that you've been sat in, offering your help, and that's all you need to do, okay, to show that you're enthusiastic. With regard to the opposite situation arising where you've got so much going on, I think, firstly, don't be tempted. It's a really good habit to get into as early as possible. I think a lot of lawyers are guilty of being people pleasers and want to say yes to everything. So there are ways of going about how you manage the work being given to you. Always acknowledge that you're really delighted to have been considered for the work and that it's something you really want to be involved in. I think there's always, wriggle room for negotiating deadlines, and make the person who's giving you the work aware of what else you're doing so that they can help you manage your time. And then really it's about working out for yourself, because everyone has their own styles of how they manage their time. Are you a sort of to-do list person, or do you prefer to, how do you like to spread your day? Are you a morning person or an afternoon person? So think about what order you're going to do tasks in. And one tip with regard to ordering and prioritization is don't muddle important and urgent, because something might be important, but you might have 2 weeks to do it. Urgent and important have to be prioritized, then important, and then nice to haves.
Yeah, I like that distinction because I think that is definitely something I would in the past have noticed that I was not making distinction between. The other question I had was in relation to when you're doing the scheme, and obviously, as you said, you are given a set number of tasks, and you have, programmed networking sessions. How do you kind of shape or fill in the gaps with other things that you might be interested in doing? For example, and this touches on what we spoke about in the last one, networking, for example.
I dare say that you will end up being given a schedule for the week or for the fortnight, okay? And you'll spot pretty quickly where the gaps are and where the lunch breaks are, etc. And it's for you to decide how many hours beyond that set routine you want to commit to, okay? I think you need to pace yourself. So you'll find that there will be moments where you will be able to either have pre-arranged coffees where the firm has organised networking slots for you, or where you can do it around your sort of scheduled tasks that have been, or unscheduled tasks, should I be saying. For me, you'll find that at the moment it all feels a bit abstract, because you think, how do you actually work an office day without being in an office? And it can be quite a novel sort of construct. But it is actually, once you've see it in that sort of timetable and your diary slots start filling in, the structure almost follows naturally.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, how about when you're on the scheme and it's kind of coming towards the end and you want to do a personal assessment of the firm and how you found this scheme? Because I think I can imagine, and I haven't done it yet, that I'll get so wrapped up in everything that's happening that it will be almost be finished before in the blink of an eye. And so I just wondering if you have any kind of tips on how to keep check of how you're getting on and making sure that you're enjoying it and you're assessing all the right things you want to assess, so that when it comes to that final decision, hopefully you're really happy with the decision you make and it's the right decision for you.
Really glad you mentioned that, because I don't know about you, but I've become a bit of a fan of journaling, and I do like taking time out in my day to really reflect on how it's gone, what's gone well, what could I have done differently, and what have I enjoyed, why haven't I enjoyed it, and just asking those really pertinent questions to yourself. You can make a note of who you've met, what they were like, uh, and rather than waiting until the end of the scheme when you'll have forgotten most of it, it's better to do it frequently when you've got a bit of downtime, or certainly in the evenings. You also, I find it quite therapeutic because it means I can get closure on the day. Because I find that what sometimes keeps me awake at night is trying to revisit the entire day and going through it whilst lying in bed, trying to get to sleep. Whereas if you've done that prior to going to bed, then you know that anything that's been niggling sort of, the back of your mind, you can deal with prior to bedtime.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I used to journal a lot, but I haven't done it in a number of years, but this might be a good opportunity to get back into it. Those are really my main questions about the vacation schemes. I don't know if there's any sort of top tip you would have for me or anybody else who's going into the schemes.
Sort of final point is enjoy it and be really honest with yourself to, when you decide, do you want this or not, sort of thing. Because although everyone goes into it thinking, I want to get a training contract on the back of it, don't just follow the crowd thinking, I want to get a training contract. Is, do you really want a training contract? Because as our conversation with a partner earlier on today revealed, law is a really difficult profession to sort of get into, and it's a really tough job, long hours, and if you don't enjoy it, then you will not flourish. So use it as an opportunity to start asking serious questions about what type of lawyer you actually want to become, because it's also about information gathering, not just about getting a job.
Great. Thank you so much for that. That's been really
You
helpful.
are very welcome. Really good to catch up with you again, and hopefully I will see you very soon.